Moses was chosen by God to deliver Israel. However, he was denied entry into the Promised Land. Why so? This story imparts valuable lessons on faithful obedience to God's will. It appears unjust to some. Moses, the one chosen by God to deliver Israel, confronted Pharaoh and effectively guided the Israelites out of Egypt. He endured 40 years of leading a group of stubborn, rebellious Israelites through the wilderness, amidst their incessant complaints and grumblings. Moreover, they frequently doubted God and longed for Egypt. Having endured all trials and guiding them to the doorstep of the Promised Land, Moses found himself barred from entering it. While it's understandable why the older generation didn't enter, the exclusion of Moses seems puzzling. Why was Moses denied entry into the Promised Land? By turning to the Book of Numbers, we uncover the reasons behind this decision and glean valuable lessons from Moses' encounter with God. The event leading to Moses being denied entry into the Promised Land unfolds in Numbers chapter 20. Here's a recap of the incident. In this chapter, the Israelite community reaches the desert of Zin, only to encounter a severe crisis, a lack of water for the people. In typical fashion, frustration and anger toward Moses and Aaron intensify among the Israelites. Resorting to their habitual pattern, they swiftly resort to grumbling and complaints, echoing familiar refrains. "Why have you brought us to this desolate wilderness with no water to drink?" In response, Moses and Aaron turn to seek guidance and intervention from the Lord. During this crucial moment, God issued Moses a precise instruction. The Lord said to Moses, "Take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so they and their livestock can drink." Found in Numbers chapter 20, verse 7 to 8. What follows next is pivotal to the story. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as commanded. He and Aaron assembled the community in front of the rock, and Moses addressed them, saying, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. Found in Numbers chapter 20, verse 9 to 11. God instructed Moses to speak to the rock, but instead, Moses struck it twice. Moses' actions revealed his boiling frustration and exasperation with the people. Due to his disobedience and lack of trust in God, the Lord declared, "You will not lead these people into the Promised Land." While the practical reason for Moses' exclusion from the Promised Land was his disobedience, there was also a deeper symbolism in his actions, unbeknownst to him at the time. This symbolism remained veiled for another 1,300 years, but once unveiled, it sheds light on why God made this decision: the importance of the rock. The reason Moses was not allowed to enter the Promised Land all had to do with what the rock symbolizes. The rock Moses struck was something that foreshadows or prophesies his coming. Similar symbols throughout the Bible range from Old Testament people fulfilling Christ-like roles to Old Testament objects that communicate attributes that Christ would fulfill. The true significance of this type was not fully understood until the coming of Jesus. In his initial letter to the Corinthians, the Apostle Paul elaborates on how this rock prefigured Christ. Paul states, "All of them ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ." Found in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3 to 4. Let's connect the dots. The first instance of Moses striking the rock, recounted in Exodus chapter 17, marked the Israelites' first encounter with a lack of water, prompting their complaints. In response, God instructed Moses to strike the rock, and water gushed forth. How does this relate to Jesus? Understanding the rock as a symbol of Christ, we see that Jesus was struck once and offered up once for the redemption of us all. For by that one offering, he forever made perfect those who are being made holy. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 14. After Jesus was presented as the sacrifice for our sins, the rock, symbolizing Christ, was struck. Following his crucifixion, there arose no necessity for the rock, representing Christ, to be struck again. When Moses struck the second rock in Numbers, he was unaware that his action would be likened to crucifying Christ repeatedly. It would be later generations of Hebrew and Gentile believers who would grasp the significance of this act. What he did know was that God had commanded him to do one thing, and he did something else. Lessons from Moses, not entering the promised land. 1. Partial obedience is not obedience. In the story, Moses did retrieve the staff from God's presence as directed, for which he deserves acknowledgement. However, this act amounted to partial obedience. He failed to fully execute the command. It's evident from his frustration with the Israelites, whom he labeled as rebels, that his anger caused him to adhere only partially to God's instructions. Thus, it becomes clear that partial obedience holds no weight as true obedience. 2. Actions determine whether you trust God or not. The adage, "actions speak louder than words," holds true for Moses and each of us. Merely professing trust in God is insufficient. Genuine trust is demonstrated through our actions. Faith extends beyond verbal affirmation. It is substantiated by our deeds. In this instance, Moses' act of striking the rock revealed his lack of belief in God's ability to provide water without such intervention, thereby exposing his deficiency in trust. 3. Some decisions come with irreversible consequences. Life presents challenges in the form of decisions with irreversible consequences. While God assures forgiveness for our transgressions, He doesn't guarantee the removal of all resulting repercussions. There will be occasions when the outcomes of our choices cannot be avoided. However, this doesn't signify the end of our relationship with God, as He remains faithful in extending forgiveness. Moses' exclusion from the Promised Land stemmed from his choices, yet he continued his relationship with God. If you've sinned, your connection with God persists, and forgiveness is available, though consequences may still ensue. 4. God provided despite Moses' disobedience. This narrative highlights God's mercy and love for the Israelites, even in the face of Moses' disobedience. Despite Moses' lapse, God still provided water when they were thirsty, underscoring His unwavering care. It's crucial to recognize that God's faithfulness to us isn't contingent upon our faithfulness to Him. Were that the case, we'd never experience His faithfulness, for He remains steadfast in His nature. His promise to never forsake us holds true, even in moments of disobedience. Reflecting on Moses' account in Numbers chapter 20, we're reminded of the significance of finishing well. Though Moses beheld the promised land, he never set foot in it. Some choices yield irreversible consequences. Thus, it's vital to exercise caution in decision-making, especially in moments of frustration or anger. A hasty word or a misguided decision can alter the course of your life. Let Moses' story serve as a lesson to choose wisely, as the repercussions of a wrong choice may lead to unforeseen outcomes.